She was fired because she refused to sleep with the manager. Sit back, relax, and enjoy this amazing love story. When you're done, let me know what you've learned by writing it in the comments. Now let's get to it. Maya stood speechless in her manager's office, her fingers gripping the strap of her bag as if holding on to her last shred of sanity. The walls, lined with company awards and framed certificates, suddenly felt like a prison, closing in on her. "You're firing me?" she finally managed to say, her voice trembling with disbelief. Her manager, Mr. Collins, leaned back in his chair, a smirk tugging at the corners of his mouth. "You refuse all my advancements," he said, twirling a pen between his fingers as if the conversation bored him. Maya's stomach twisted. She had seen this coming, but she had hoped, prayed, that professionalism would prevail. "So I'm being fired because I refuse to sleep with you?" she asked, her voice rising. Mr. Collins shrugged. "I wouldn't put it that way. Let's just say you're not a team player. And honestly, Maya, you don't have any proof of what you're accusing me of." Maya clenched her jaw, her nails digging into her palms. Proof. That was always the loophole. It didn't matter how many times he had cornered her in the break room, whispered inappropriate comments in her ear, or brushed his hand against her back under the guise of friendly gestures. Without evidence, she was just another disposable employee in a system that protected men like him. Tears burned in her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. She straightened her shoulders, summoning every ounce of strength she had left. "You're right," she said, her voice now eerily calm. "I don't have proof, but I do have a voice." Collins frowned, his smirk faltering. "I'll make sure everyone knows what kind of man you are," Maya continued, stepping closer. "Maybe I won't win in court, maybe the company will back you up, but I won't be silent. I won't let you do this to anyone else." For the first time, Mr. Collins looked uneasy. "Be careful with your words, Maya," he warned. She let out a short, humorless laugh. "Oh, don't worry. I will be." With one last glance at the office she had dedicated years of her life to, Maya turned on her heel and walked out, her heart pounding. She had lost her job, but she had gained something far more important: her dignity. And that, she decided, was worth fighting for. Maya rushed through the hotel lobby, her mind spinning with anger, humiliation, and the overwhelming uncertainty of what came next. Tears blurred her vision, and she barely noticed the polished marble floors, the warm glow of the chandeliers, or the guests moving around her. She wasn't even sure how she ended up here. She had left the office in a daze, walking for what felt like hours before her feet carried her to this grand hotel. Maybe she just needed a place to sit, to breathe, to figure out what to do next. Just as she reached the entrance, her shoulder collided hard with someone. "Oh, I'm so sorry, sir," Maya stammered, her voice trembling as she wiped at her tear-streaked face. A strong hand reached out, steadying her. "Hey, are you okay?" She looked up and met a pair of deep, concerned brown eyes. The man standing before her was breathtakingly handsome. Tall, with neatly styled dark hair, a chiseled jawline, and a suit that fit him like it was made just for him. There was something about him, an air of quiet authority mixed with warmth. Maya opened her mouth, but nothing came out. She wasn't okay. She was far from okay. But how could she tell a stranger that her entire world had just been shattered? I'm fine," she finally whispered, forcing a small, unconvincing smile. The man's brow furrowed as he studied her. "You don't look fine." His voice was smooth, comforting. "Here, let's sit down for a moment." Maya hesitated. She didn't know him, but right now she needed someone, anyone, to show her kindness. He guided her to a quiet corner of the hotel lobby, where a plush seating area overlooked a stunning indoor garden. As they sat, he handed her a clean handkerchief from his pocket. "Thank you," she murmured, dabbing at her eyes. "Don't mention it," he said with a small smile. "I'm Daniel, by the way." "Maya? Well, Maya, if you don't mind me saying, you look like someone who's just had the worst day of their life." A bitter laugh escaped her lips. "That's because I have." Daniel leaned forward slightly. "Want to talk about it?" Maya hesitated again, but something about his presence, calm, genuine, non-judgmental, made her want to trust him. She took a deep breath, her fingers tightening around the handkerchief, and for the first time that day, she let herself speak. Maya let out a shaky breath, still gripping the handkerchief Daniel had given her. She hesitated for a moment, then said, "I was working at Collins & Moore, but today..." Her voice wavered. Today, I got fired because I refused to sleep with my manager. Daniel's expression darkened, his jaw tightening. Are you serious? Maya gave a bitter laugh. I wish I wasn't. She wiped at her eyes again and sighed. He made advances for months. I ignored them, rejected him politely, but he kept pushing. And today, he finally got what he wanted. Not the way he planned, but he still won. Daniel shook his head. No, he didn't win. Maya looked up at him, confused. What do you mean? He leaned back, running a hand through his hair as if deciding what to say next. I know Collins and Moore, he said finally. I know some people there. And trust me, your manager doesn't get to just do this and walk away. Maya frowned. What do you mean you know some people? Daniel hesitated for a brief moment, then reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a sleek business card. He handed it to her, and as she looked down, her eyes widened in shock. Daniel Carter, CEO, Carter Industries. Maya's head snapped up. You're? Daniel gave a small, almost sheepish smile. Yeah. Carter Industries was one of the biggest business consulting firms in the country. It worked with major corporations, including Collins and Moore. If Daniel was involved with them, that meant he had power. Real power. Maya swallowed hard. I don't understand. Daniel leaned forward, his eyes locked on hers. What your manager did was illegal. If you want to fight this, I can help. I have lawyers, connections. You don't have to let him get away with this. Maya's heart pounded. She had spent the last few hours feeling powerless, like her entire career had just been stolen from her. But now, for the first time since she stepped into her manager's office that morning, she felt something different. Hope. She met Daniel's gaze, a spark of determination igniting in her chest. What do I have to do? Daniel smiled. First, let's get you a good lawyer. Maya took a deep breath and nodded. Okay, let's do this. That evening, Daniel sat in his penthouse office, staring out at the city skyline, but his mind was somewhere else. Maya. There was something about her that lingered in his thoughts. It wasn't just her beauty, though he'd be lying if he said he hadn't noticed it. It was her strength. The way she had stood her ground despite being cornered, humiliated, and wronged. The fire in her eyes when she decided to fight back. He admired her courage, and he wanted to make sure she was okay. The next morning, as soon as he got to his office, he picked up his phone and dialed her number. After a few rings, she answered. Hello? Good morning, Maya. It's Daniel. There was a pause, then a small sigh. Daniel, hi. Her voice was still a little tired, but there was warmth in it. I thank you for yesterday. I really needed someone to remind me that I'm not completely powerless. Daniel smiled. You're far from powerless. You just needed someone to remind you of that. She chuckled softly. Well, you did. There was a brief silence, and then Daniel cleared his throat. I wanted to check in. Did you sleep okay? Maya hesitated. Not really. She admitted. I kept thinking about what's next. What if I can't get another job? What if he ruins my reputation? Daniel's voice was firm. He won't. I won't let that happen. Maya was quiet for a moment. Why are you helping me, Daniel? He leaned back in his chair. Because what happened to you isn't right, and because you deserve better than to let someone like him take away what you've worked for. Maya exhaled, and Daniel could almost picture her rubbing her temple as she processed everything. I don't know how to thank you, she said softly. You don't have to, Daniel replied. Then, after a beat, he added, how about we meet for lunch? There's something I want to discuss with you. Lunch? Maya sounded surprised. Yes, nothing formal, just I have an idea that might help. There was a pause. Then she said, okay, lunch it is. Daniel smiled. Great, I'll send you the details. As he ended the call, he felt something stir in his chest. Something he hadn't expected. This wasn't just about helping Maya get justice anymore. It was about her. And he wasn't sure what that meant yet. Hours later, Maya arrived at the upscale restaurant Daniel had chosen. She had spent more time than usual getting ready, telling herself it was just because she wanted to look professional. But as she walked inside and spotted Daniel waiting at a corner table, she realized something else. Her heart was beating faster than it should. He stood when he saw her, flashing a warm smile. Maya. She stopped for a moment, just taking him in. She had been too overwhelmed yesterday to really notice, but now she did. The way his dark hair was neatly styled, the sharp lines of his suit, the confident yet kind way he carried himself. He's really handsome. Daniel caught her staring, and his smile deepened. Everything okay? Maya quickly looked away, feeling her cheeks heat. Get it together, Maya. She cleared her throat, forcing a small laugh. Yeah, sorry, just a lot on my mind. Daniel gestured to the seat across from him. Understandable. Have a seat. She did, still feeling the warmth in her cheeks. She focused on the menu, trying to shake the odd nervousness creeping up on her. As they ordered and settled in, Daniel leaned forward slightly. So, I wanted to talk to you about something. Maya sipped her water, grateful for the distraction. Okay. What is it? I've been thinking, Daniel began, his gaze locked on hers. I can help you fight this legally. My lawyers are already looking into your case. Maya's eyes widened. Wait, you've already started? Started. He nodded. I don't waste time. Maya felt a strange warmth spread in her chest. No one had ever fought for her like this before. Daniel, I don't know what to say. Say you'll let me help. She hesitated, then nodded. Okay. Daniel smiled, clearly pleased. Good. Then, after a pause, he added, I also have another idea. Maya tilted her head. Another idea? He leaned back in his chair. You're talented, Maya. You shouldn't have to beg for another job because some disgusting man tried to take advantage of you. What if you didn't have to? She frowned slightly. What do you mean? I want to offer you a job, Daniel said simply. At Carter Industries. Maya's breath hitched. You're offering me a job? Daniel nodded. I need someone like you. Strong, smart, determined. You'd be a great addition to my team. Maya stared at him, her emotions all over the place. Part of her wanted to say yes immediately, but another part hesitated. Was he offering because he truly believed in her, or because he felt sorry for her? As if reading her mind, Daniel added, This isn't charity, Maya. I don't pity you, I respect you, and I think you'd be an asset to my company. Maya swallowed hard, feeling overwhelmed. This morning, she had woken up feeling lost. And now she had a chance to fight back, to move forward. And as she looked at Daniel, his strong, confident expression, the way he genuinely seemed to believe in her, she felt something else, too. Hope. She took a deep breath. Okay, tell me more. Daniel grinned. I thought you'd say that. Maya had been working at Carter Industries for 2 weeks now, and she couldn't deny that she loved it. The environment was professional, the people were welcoming, and most importantly, there was no one trying to take advantage of her. But there was one small problem. Daniel. Every time she walked into a meeting and saw him sitting at the head of the table, effortlessly confident and in control, her pulse quickened. She tried to ignore it, convincing herself that it was just admiration for the man who had helped her when she was at her lowest. But it wasn't just admiration. It was the way his dark eyes would linger on her when he thought she wasn't looking. The way his smile made her stomach flip. The way his voice sent a shiver down her spine when he called her name. And the worst part? She wasn't the only one feeling it. Daniel was trying, really trying, to keep things professional. He had strict rules about office relationships, and getting involved with an employee was the last thing he needed. But with Maya, things felt different. He couldn't stop thinking about her. It wasn't just that she was beautiful, though she was. It was her determination, her resilience, the way she stood her ground even after everything she had been through, and the way she looked at him sometimes like she was trying not to think about him the way he was thinking about her. Drove him crazy. One evening, as most of the office cleared out, Maya stayed late, reviewing reports. Daniel passed by her office and paused at the door. "You're still here?" he asked, leaning against the frame. Maya glanced up, and for a second, they just looked at each other. The office was dimly lit, casting shadows across Daniel's face, making him look even more breathtaking than usual. "I had a few things to finish up," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. Daniel stepped inside, hands in his pockets. "You've been working hard," she shrugged. "I just want to prove that I deserve to be here." "You don't have to prove anything to me, Maya." His voice was softer now. Maya swallowed. The way he was looking at her made her heart pound. "Still, I want to." Silence hung between them, thick with something unspoken. Daniel knew he should walk away. "She's your employee. Keep it professional." But damn it, he didn't want to. Maya cleared her throat and looked back at her computer. "I should probably finish this up." Daniel exhaled sharply, forcing himself to nod. "Right, of course." He turned to leave but hesitated at the door. Then, in a voice lower than before, he added, "Don't stay too late." Maya didn't look up, but he saw the way her lips curved into a small smile. "I won't," she said. Daniel walked away, but the tension lingered. They were both fighting it. But for how much longer? Months passed, and Maya's case against Collins and Moore gained traction. At first, they tried to dismiss her, claiming she had no evidence. But then something unexpected happened. Other women started coming forward. Former and current employees began speaking up, sharing their own experiences of harassment and discrimination within the company. What had started as Maya's fight had turned into something much bigger. Faced with mounting pressure and a potential PR disaster, Collins and Moore decided to settle out of court. Maya sat across from her lawyer as she read through the final agreement. A $2 million severance package. An official statement from the company admitting to misconduct. And most satisfying of all, Austin, her former manager, had been fired. She had won. When she walked out of the legal office that afternoon, the sun felt warmer on her skin, the air lighter. She had spent so long feeling powerless, but now she had taken back control. That evening, Maya found herself sitting across from Daniel at an intimate restaurant. It wasn't a business meeting this time, it was a celebration. "To justice," Daniel said, raising his glass of wine. Maya smiled, clinking her glass against his. "To moving forward." Daniel watched her for a moment, admiration clear in his eyes. "You did something incredible, Maya. You didn't just fight for yourself. You gave other women the courage to speak up." Maya exhaled, feeling the weight of it all finally lift. "I guess I did," he smirked. "And you got $2 million in the process." She laughed. "Yeah, that too." Daniel leaned in slightly. "So, what's next for you?" Maya hesitated. She could do anything now, start her own business, travel, invest. But as she looked at Daniel, the man who had been by her side through it all, she realized something. "I don't know yet," she admitted, "but I think I want to figure it out here." Daniel's expression softened. "At Carter Industries?" She nodded. "If you still want me." His lips curved into a slow, knowing smile. "I always want you, Maya." The air between them shifted, something unspoken but undeniable passing between them. Maya felt her heartbeat quicken, but this time she didn't look away. Maybe this was just the beginning. And maybe, for the first time in a long time, she was exactly where she was meant to be. The car ride to Maya's apartment had been quiet, but it wasn't an uncomfortable silence. It was charged, filled with unspoken words and lingering glances. As they pulled up in front of her building, Daniel turned off the engine and shifted to face her. "Maya, I want to tell you something," he said, his tone serious. She turned to him, her heart pounding. There was something intense in his gaze, something that made her breath hitch. "Okay," she whispered. Daniel took a deep breath. "First, you're fired." Maya's eyes widened in shock. "What?" she choked out, but before she could process it, he continued. "And second, I love you." Silence. Maya stared at him, completely caught off guard. "You, what?" Daniel chuckled softly, reaching for her hand. "I love you, Maya. I've been trying to fight it, to keep things professional, but I can't anymore. Every time I see you, I want you more. Every time you walk into a room, I can't focus on anything else. I don't just admire your strength, I've fallen for you." Maya's heart was racing, but she couldn't stop herself from asking, "And the firing part?" Daniel smirked. "I can't date my employee, so I figured I'd rather have you in my life than in my company." Maya let out a breathless laugh, relief washing over her. "You scared me for a second." He squeezed her hand. "Don't be scared. This isn't a decision I made lightly, but I don't want to spend another day pretending I don't want to be with you." Maya searched his face, looking for hesitation, but there was none, only certainty. And then, before she could second-guess herself, she leaned in and kissed him. It was soft at first, hesitant, but then Daniel cupped her face, deepening the kiss, and suddenly nothing else mattered. Not her past, not the struggles, not even the fact that she had just lost her job, again. All that mattered was this moment. When they finally pulled away, Daniel rested his forehead against hers. "So, what do you think?" Maya smiled. I love you too." Daniel grinned. "Good. Now let's figure out what you're going to do next." Maya laughed. "Well, I did just get $2 million. Maybe I'll start my own company." Daniel's eyes sparkled. "And if you do, I'll be your first investor." Maya smirked. "Or maybe I'll hire you this time." Daniel chuckled. I'd work for you any day, Miss Burton. As they sat there wrapped up in each other, Maya realized something. For the first time in a long time, she wasn't afraid of what came next. She was ready. And she wasn't alone. The dim glow of Maya's office lamp cast soft shadows across the room as she and Daniel sat side by side, going over the final details of her new travel agency. Papers were scattered across the desk, forgotten as exhaustion mixed with an undeniable tension that had been building for weeks. It had started with late-night brainstorming sessions, then casual touches, a hand brushing against hers, lingering eye contact that said more than words ever could. And now, as the clock neared midnight, neither of them could fight it anymore. Daniel leaned back in his chair, running a hand through his hair as he exhaled. "You've built something amazing, Maya," he said, his voice low, husky. "I'm proud of you." Maya smiled, turning to face him, but the way he was looking at her sent a shiver down her spine. His gaze was dark, intense, filled with something she had seen before but never acknowledged: desire. The air between them thickened as he reached out, brushing a stray curl from her face. "You have no idea how much I want you," he murmured. Maya's breath hitched, her heart pounding. She had spent so long trying to stay professional, trying to keep the lines between them clear. But in this moment, with Daniel's eyes locked on hers, that line didn't just blur. It disappeared. She didn't think, didn't hesitate. Instead, she moved, closing the space between them and straddling his lap, her legs wrapping around his waist. Daniel groaned softly, his hands immediately finding her hips, pulling her closer. "Maya," he breathed, his voice thick with need. "I want you too, Daniel." She whispered against his lips before capturing them in a deep, hungry kiss. Their restraint shattered in an instant. His hands roamed her body, tracing the curves he had only imagined touching before. She moaned softly as his lips traveled down her neck, igniting a fire that had been waiting to burn. Clothes were discarded, hands explored, and by the time they finally gave in completely, there was no doubt, this wasn't just passion. It was something deeper. Something neither of them could fight anymore. As they lay tangled together hours later, the city lights casting a glow through the windows, Maya rested her head against Daniel's chest, feeling the steady rise and fall of his breathing. He kissed her forehead, his arms tightening around her. "This was inevitable, wasn't it?" he murmured. Maya smiled, tracing circles on his skin. "Yeah, it was." Neither of them knew what came next, but for tonight, that didn't matter. All that mattered was this. Daniel watched Maya closely, his heart pounding as he waited for her response. He had never asked anyone to move in with him before. Hell, he had never felt this way about anyone before. But with Maya, everything was different. Maya hesitated for only a moment. It wasn't because she was unsure, she was just taking it all in. She had spent so much of her life alone, moving through the world without anyone to truly call home. Her parents had passed away years ago, and her only family was a distant aunt she barely spoke to. But now, looking into Daniel's eyes, she realized something. She wasn't alone anymore. "Okay," she said softly. Daniel's lips parted slightly, as if he hadn't expected her to agree so easily. "Yeah?" Maya nodded, a small smile playing on her lips. "Yeah, let's do it." A slow grin spread across Daniel's face before he pulled her into his arms. "You just made me the happiest man alive," he murmured into her hair. Maya laughed against his chest, feeling warmth spread through her. "I guess that means I'll have to start packing." Daniel pulled back slightly, tilting her chin up so she had no choice but to meet his gaze. "No rush, but just so you know, I plan on making you feel at home every single day." Her heart melted. She had never imagined herself in a situation like this, not after everything she had been through. But with Daniel, it felt right. Maybe, just maybe, she had finally found where she truly belonged. Months passed, and Maya's travel agency flourished. What had started as a dream was now a thriving business, with clients pouring in from all over. She had built something incredible, and every day she felt proud of how far she had come. But success wasn't the only thing growing. Her relationship with Daniel had deepened in ways she never expected. Living together had only strengthened their bond, and every day with him felt like a new adventure. He was her biggest supporter, her best friend, and the love of her life. One evening, after a long day at work, Daniel surprised Maya with a candlelit dinner on their rooftop. The city lights sparkled below them, and the air was filled with the soft hum of music. Maya looked around, eyes wide. Daniel, what is all this? Daniel took her hands, his gaze filled with love. Just something special for the woman I love. Maya smiled, feeling her heart swell. She had no idea that tonight would change her life forever. As they finished their meal, Daniel stood and reached into his pocket. Taking a deep breath, he dropped to one knee. Maya gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. Maya, Daniel began, his voice filled with emotion. From the moment I met you, you changed my life. You're strong, kind, and the most incredible woman I've ever known. I don't want to spend another day without knowing you'll be mine forever. He opened a small velvet box, revealing a stunning diamond ring. Will you marry me? Tears filled Maya's eyes as she nodded frantically. Yes, yes, Daniel. Daniel slipped the ring onto her finger before standing and pulling her into a deep, passionate kiss. As the city lights shone around them, Maya knew this was the happiest moment of her life, and the beginning of forever. Weeks had passed since their engagement, and Maya couldn't have been happier. Wedding plans were in motion, her business was thriving, and Daniel was everything she had ever wanted. But there was one thing left: meeting his parents. Daniel had always been vague about them, but Maya didn't think much of it. She assumed they were just reserved, maybe a little strict, but nothing could have prepared her for what actually happened. That evening, Maya dressed carefully, wanting to make a good impression. She wore a sophisticated yet elegant dress, styled her hair perfectly, and reminded herself that no matter what, she belonged here, beside Daniel. But from the moment they arrived at the lavish Carter estate, she felt something was off. Daniel's father, Richard Carter, was a tall, imposing man with sharp eyes that scrutinized her the moment she walked in. His mother, Evelyn, barely spared her a glance before taking a slow sip of wine, as if Maya was an inconvenience rather than their son's fiancée. Dinner started tense, and it only got worse. So, Maya, Richard finally said, setting down his glass of whiskey. Tell me, how exactly did you trap my son into this engagement? Maya's breath hitched, but before she could respond, Daniel's jaw tightened. Dad, stop. His father ignored him. A former nobody who somehow stumbles into wealth. Sounds suspicious, doesn't it? He turned to Evelyn. Maybe she saw an easy target. Maya's stomach twisted. She had prepared for a cold welcome, but this was outright hostility. Daniel pushed his chair back, his voice dangerously low. Enough. But Richard wasn't finished. He leaned forward, his eyes dark and full of warning. Daniel, are you asking us to disinherit you? Silence. Maya felt her breath catch as Daniel's mother finally spoke, her tone icy. If you marry this, she waved a hand dismissively in Maya's direction, you will no longer be a Carter. Maya's heart pounded. She turned to Daniel, expecting hesitation, uncertainty, something. But there was none. Daniel stood, his expression unreadable as he reached for Maya's hand. Then so be it. His father's face darkened. You would throw away everything for her? Daniel squeezed Maya's hand, his voice unwavering. She is everything. Maya's chest tightened, emotions swirling. She had never asked him to choose, but he just did. His mother let out a quiet scoff, shaking her head. How disappointing. Daniel exhaled sharply. No, what's disappointing is thinking your love is conditional. He turned to Maya, his gaze softening. Come on, we're leaving. Maya felt her pulse racing as she followed him out. As they walked into the night, away from the cold and unwelcoming house, Maya stopped and looked at him. Daniel, are you sure? Daniel cupped her face gently. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. Tears welled in her eyes, but this time they weren't from sadness. They were from love. Love that no amount of wealth or disapproval could ever destroy. It had been over a week since the disastrous dinner at his parents' house, and Daniel hadn't heard a word from them since. He wasn't surprised. His father had always been a man of control, using money and power as leverage to get what he wanted. But Daniel had made his choice. He wasn't going to let anyone dictate his happiness. Still, he wasn't naive. His family's fortune was tied to Carter Industries, and if his parents followed through on their threats, he could lose access to everything overnight. He needed to be prepared. Sitting in his private office, Daniel pulled up his banking details and began the process of transferring a significant portion of his personal funds to a separate account. This was money he had earned through personal investments, not family wealth, money he could use to start fresh if necessary. A knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. "Come in," he called. Maya stepped inside, looking hesitant. "Hey, you've been quiet all morning." Daniel gave her a small smile. Motioning for her to come closer, she walked over, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Are you okay?" He turned in his chair to face her. "I'm fine, just making sure we're ready for whatever comes next." Maya glanced at the screen, realizing what he was doing. "Daniel, are you really preparing to walk away from everything?" He exhaled, taking her hands in his. "Maya, my father wasn't bluffing. If I go through with this marriage, I could lose my position in Carter Industries, my shares, everything. I won't let them leave me with nothing." Maya's heart clenched. "I never wanted you to have to choose between me and your family." Daniel shook his head. "I didn't choose between you and them. I chose us, and I'd do it again." Maya felt tears sting her eyes, overwhelmed by how much he was willing to sacrifice for her. "I don't care about money, Daniel. If we have to start over, we will." He smiled, cupping her face. "We won't be starting over, we'll be building something of our own. Together." Maya nodded, love shining in her eyes. "Together." Daniel pressed a soft kiss to her lips before whispering, "No matter what happens, I'll always take care of you." As they held each other in that quiet office, both of them knew, whatever came next, they would face it side by side. And they were ready. A few days later, Daniel sat in his office, reviewing the final paperwork for Maya's travel agency expansion. He was focused, determined, but when his phone rang and he saw his father's name on the screen, his jaw tightened. He let it ring for a moment before answering. "What do you want, Dad?" A cold chuckle came through the line. "So you're serious about that girl?" Richard Carter's voice was calm, but Daniel knew that tone. It was the voice of a man who was about to strike. Daniel leaned back in his chair. "I already told you, I'm marrying Maya. Nothing you say will change that." His father sighed. "I expected more from you, son. But since you insist on making a fool of yourself, I see you've already taken precautions, moving your money, preparing for the worst." Daniel's grip on the phone tightened. "I don't trust you not to cut me off, so I made sure I had a plan." Richard let out a slow, deliberate breath. "Smart, but not smart enough. You may have your money, but let's see who will do business with you in this city." Daniel's stomach clenched, but he kept his voice even. "Meaning?" "Meaning," his father said smoothly, "that I have spent decades building relationships, shaping this city's business landscape. You think you can walk away and still thrive? Let's see how many doors remain open for you when I close them myself." Daniel's blood ran cold. He knew his father was ruthless, but this was war. "Are you really that threatened by Maya?" Daniel asked, his voice sharp. Richard scoffed. "I'm not threatened. I'm disappointed. You had everything, power, legacy, a future already set in stone, and you threw it away for a woman who brings nothing to the table." Daniel's anger flared. "Maya is worth more than anything you could ever offer me." Silence. Then Richard's voice dropped lower, colder. "Then let's see if your love can survive when you have nothing." The line went dead. Daniel lowered the phone, his mind already racing. His father wasn't bluffing. Within days, business deals could start falling apart, partnerships could disappear. His name, once a golden ticket in the business world, could become a liability. Maya walked into the office then, immediately noticing the tension in his face. "Daniel? What's wrong?" He looked up at her, his expression hardening with resolve. "My father just declared war." Maya's eyes widened. "What do you mean?" Daniel exhaled, standing to take her hands in his. "He's going to try to shut me out of the business world. Block opportunities, ruin deals, make sure I fail." Maya swallowed hard, her heart aching for him. "Daniel, what are we going to do?" He met her gaze, unwavering. "We fight back." Maya's fingers tightened around his. "Together?" Daniel's lips curled into a small, determined smile. "Always." The battle had begun, but Daniel Carter wasn't a man who backed down. And with Maya by his side, he had everything he needed to win. Daniel had expected challenges when he walked away from the Carter Empire, but he hadn't expected just how ruthless his father would be. Every avenue he turned, every investor he approached, every deal he tried to close, there was a problem. Either the investors suddenly pulled out, permits were mysteriously delayed, or suppliers refused to work with him. It didn't take long for Daniel to realize that his father was making good on his threat. Richard Carter had built a powerful network over the years, and now he was using it to make sure his son failed. But Daniel wasn't a man who gave up easily. Meanwhile, Maya's business was still thriving. Her travel agency had grown beyond what she imagined, and she was bringing in more clients every day. She supported Daniel the best she could, encouraging him to stay strong, to keep fighting. But then, his father found out about her success. One morning, Maya walked into her office to find her employees whispering in small clusters, their faces filled with worry. Her assistant, Leah, rushed over, looking pale. "Maya, we have a problem." Maya frowned. "What is it?" Leah swallowed hard. "Several of our major partners just canceled their contracts with us. Airlines, hotels, they're all pulling out." Maya's stomach dropped. "What, why?" Leah hesitated before handing her a printed email. Maya's hands shook as she read it. "Dear Miss Burton, due to recent business advisories, we regret to inform you that we can no longer continue our partnership with your agency. We wish you the best in your future endeavors." Maya looked up, her heart pounding. "Who sent this advisory?" Leah bit her lip. "It was anonymous, but some of our contacts hinted that it came from the Carter family." Maya's breath caught in her throat. Richard Carter. Her hands clenched into fists. He wasn't just targeting Daniel anymore, he was coming after her. She grabbed her phone and called Daniel. He picked up immediately. "Maya, your father just came after my business," she said, her voice shaking with anger. "He's trying to shut me down too." There was a long silence on the other end. Then Daniel's voice, cold and sharp. He just made the biggest mistake of his life. Maya took a deep breath, steeling herself. "What do we do?" Daniel's jaw tightened. "We stop playing defense. It's time to fight back." The war wasn't over. It was just getting started. That evening, Daniel and Maya sat in their dimly lit apartment, the weight of the situation pressing down on them. The empire Richard Carter had built wasn't just powerful. It was deeply connected. Every failed business attempt, every lost opportunity was a reminder that as long as they stayed in the city, Daniel's father would keep trying to crush them. Daniel exhaled, rubbing his temples. "My father is too big here. Every door I knock on, he shuts before I even get a chance. If we want to succeed, we need to leave." Maya squeezed his hand. "Then let's go," she said softly. Daniel looked at her, searching her face. "Are you sure?" She nodded. "Yes. I love you, Daniel, and I believe in us. We don't need his name, his money, or his influence. We can build something for ourselves, somewhere new, somewhere he can't control us." Daniel studied her for a moment, then smiled, his grip tightening around hers. "You always know how to keep me grounded." Maya smiled back. "And before we leave, let's get married." Daniel's eyes widened slightly. "You want to do the wedding now?" "Not the big wedding," she clarified. "Just a simple court wedding. For us, when we get to the next city, we'll figure out the rest." Daniel's heart swelled. "You really want to marry me now?" Maya laughed. "Of course, you idiot." Daniel chuckled, leaning in to kiss her softly. "Then let's do it." The very next day, they went to the courthouse, hand in hand, with only a few close friends as witnesses. There were no extravagant decorations, no grand ceremony, just the two of them choosing each other despite everything. When the officiant finally said, "I now pronounce you husband and wife," Maya looked up at Daniel, her heart full. "We did it," she whispered. Daniel smiled, cupping her face. "Yeah, we did." Then he kissed her. Long, deep, and full of promise. As they walked out of the courthouse, their hands intertwined, Maya turned to him. "So, where are we going?" Daniel grinned. "Somewhere far enough to build a new empire. Just you and me." Maya nodded, determination shining in her eyes. "Then let's go." With nothing but love and ambition, they left the city behind, ready to create their own future, on their own terms. Weeks passed, and for the first time in his life, Richard Carter couldn't track his son's movements. No business headlines, no investment deals, no whispers in the corporate world. It was as if Daniel had vanished. Frustrated, he called his usual contacts, but no one had any answers. Daniel hadn't just left the city, he had left his father's entire sphere of influence. Richard scowled as he sat in his office. "You think you can escape me, son?" he muttered. "Let's see how long you last without the Carter name." Meanwhile, in a new city, Maya sat in their small but cozy apartment, her laptop open as she finalized the details of her new online travel agency. Unlike before, she didn't need to rely on partnerships with big hotels or airlines. Instead, she focused on customized travel experiences, working with smaller, independent businesses worldwide. Her social media marketing was taking off, and within weeks, she had secured her first set of clients. Business was growing, slowly but surely. And she wasn't the only one making moves. Daniel had wasted no time getting back into the corporate world, but this time, he was building his own empire. Instead of trying to compete in his father's business world, he pivoted: tech investments. He started working with up-and-coming startups, offering them funding and guidance in exchange for equity. His eye for talent and innovation made him a force to be reckoned with. One evening, as they sat on their small balcony overlooking the city skyline, Maya leaned against Daniel's shoulder. "We're really doing this, aren't we?" she said softly. Daniel kissed the top of her head. "Yeah, we are." Maya smiled. "Do you think your father has noticed we're gone?" Daniel chuckled. "Oh, he's noticed, and it's driving him crazy." Maya laughed. "Good." For the first time in a long time, they felt free. No interference, no control. Just them, building their dreams together. But they both knew one thing for certain. Richard Carter wasn't done with them yet. They had left everything behind to start fresh in a new city, and what a year it had been. Maya's online travel agency had exploded in popularity. What started as a small business had grown into a global brand, attracting clients from all over the world. She had built something incredible, on her own terms. Daniel, too, had made huge strides. His investments in tech startups had paid off, and he was quickly becoming a major player in the industry. His name, once overshadowed by his father's empire, now stood on its own. Together, they had built a life of success, love, and absolute freedom. And now, they were ready for the next step. After 2 years of hard work, they had finally purchased their dream home. A stunning, modern house with floor-to-ceiling windows, breathtaking city views, and a peaceful backyard where they imagined future memories being made. The day they moved in, Daniel stood in the spacious living room, admiring how far they had come. He turned as Maya walked in, a soft smile on her lips. "This place is perfect," he said, pulling her into his arms. Maya hesitated for a moment before biting her lip. "I actually have one more surprise for you." Daniel raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "Another one? What is it?" Maya took a deep breath, her heart racing. Then, with a soft smile, she whispered, "I'm pregnant, love." For a moment, Daniel just stared at her, as if trying to process her words. Then his eyes widened, and a huge grin broke across his face. "Wait, you're serious?" His voice was filled with excitement. Maya nodded, tears of happiness shining in her eyes. "Yes, Daniel, we're gonna have a baby." Before she could say another word, Daniel scooped her up in his arms, spinning her around as laughter filled the house. "We're having a baby!" he exclaimed, his voice full of pure joy. Maya giggled as he finally set her down, his hand still on her waist. "Are you happy?" she asked softly. Daniel cupped her face, his eyes filled with love and wonder. "Happy? Maya, you just made me the happiest man in the world." He placed a gentle hand on her stomach, his touch reverent. "I love you," he whispered, "and I already love our baby more than anything." Maya's heart swelled. "I love you too, Daniel." As they stood there, wrapped in each other's arms, they knew this was only the beginning of their beautiful future. No matter what challenges came their way, they had already proven that together they could overcome anything. And now, they had one more reason to keep building their dreams. Richard Carter sat in his grand living room, the fire crackling in the background, but the warmth did nothing to ease the tension in the room. Across from him, his wife, Evelyn, paced angrily, her heels clicking against the marble floor. "It's been 2 whole years, Richard," she fumed. 2 whole years since I've seen my son." Richard sighed, rubbing his temples. "Evelyn." "No, don't Evelyn me," she snapped, turning to face him. "You were only supposed to scare him, teach him a lesson, not chase him away." Richard clenched his jaw. He had never expected Daniel to actually disappear. He had assumed his son would come crawling back after a few months, realizing he needed his family, their influence, their power. But instead, Daniel had vanished. No business ties, no phone calls, not even a whisper in the corporate world. Richard had tried searching for him, but Daniel had been smart. He had cut all ties to the Carter name, making himself nearly untraceable. And now, for the first time, Richard was questioning his decision. Evelyn's voice shook with emotion. "He's our only child, Richard. What have you done? Richard exhaled, standing up. I did what I thought was best. He was throwing away everything I built for him, for her. Evelyn's eyes flashed with anger. That girl was never the problem. You were. You pushed him away with your obsession for control. Richard turned away, his face hardening. He'll come back eventually. Evelyn let out a bitter laugh. Are you blind? If he hasn't come back in 2 years, why would he now? Richard didn't answer. Deep down, he knew the truth. Daniel wasn't coming back. And that realization left a bitter taste in his mouth. Just then, a loud ding echoed from his wife's phone. She pulled it out, her expression shifting from anger to shock. Richard frowned. What is it? Evelyn's hands trembled as she stared at the screen. Slowly, she looked up, her eyes wide. Daniel, she whispered, he's in another city. Richard's breath caught. You found him? Evelyn swallowed hard, nodding. But then she whispered something that made Richard's entire world stop. And he's going to be a father. Silence. Richard's hands clenched at his sides, his mind spinning. A baby? His son wasn't just building a life without them. He was starting a family. And for the first time in his entire life, Richard Carter felt something he had never felt before. Fear. Fear that he had lost Daniel forever. Richard Carter stared at his wife, his sharp eyes narrowing. Which city? He repeated, his voice demanding. Evelyn kept her expression neutral, but inside, her heart pounded. She knew her husband too well. If he found out where Daniel was, he wouldn't go there to apologize. He would try to control him again, maybe even manipulate him into coming back. So she did something she had never done before. She lied. I don't know yet, she said, shaking her head. But I'll find out soon, and when I do, we'll go and apologize. Richard exhaled, rubbing his chin. He didn't trust easily, but Evelyn had always been by his side, always understood the bigger picture. If she was saying they needed to apologize, perhaps she was right. Fine, he muttered, but the moment you know, we're leaving. This nonsense has gone on long enough. Evelyn nodded, keeping her face calm. Of course. But in her heart, she knew the truth. Richard wasn't ready to apologize. Not yet. And if she wanted to see her son again, she would have to do things her way. Maya sat on the couch, her hands resting on her small but growing baby bump. Daniel sat beside her, his hand over hers, rubbing gentle circles. I still can't believe we're having a baby, Daniel murmured, smiling. Maya chuckled. Well, believe it, Daddy-to-be. Daniel leaned down, pressing a soft kiss to her belly. Our little one is going to have the best life. Maya sighed happily, then hesitated. Do you think your parents will ever come looking for you? Daniel's expression darkened slightly, but then he shrugged. Maybe, but it doesn't matter. They made their choice, and I made mine. Maya nodded, but something in her gut told her this wasn't over. And she was right. Because miles away, Evelyn Carter was already making her own plans to find her son, but not to bring him back to Richard. No, she was going to find Daniel alone, because she refused to let her husband's pride be the reason she lost her son forever. Maya's breath caught in her throat as she stared at the woman standing on her doorstep. Evelyn Carter, Daniel's mother. For a moment, Maya couldn't move. She had met Evelyn before when Daniel had introduced her to his parents. She never expected to see either of them again. Yet, here she was. Evelyn stood with her hands clasped in front of her, dressed elegantly in a beige coat, her expression unreadable. But her eyes looked different. Not cold, not judgmental, but pleading. Maya finally found her voice. Mrs. Carter? Evelyn gave a small, hesitant smile. Hello, Maya. Maya's heart pounded. How did you find us? Evelyn sighed. It wasn't easy, but I had to come. Please, can I see my son? Maya hesitated. She didn't know if this was a trick, if Richard had sent her, or if she had her own reasons for being here. But before she could respond, Daniel's voice came from behind her. Maya? Who's at the... He stopped mid-sentence as his eyes landed on his mother. His entire body went rigid. Mama? He said, barely above a whisper. Evelyn swallowed hard, tears forming in her eyes at the sound of his voice. Daniel. A long silence stretched between them. Maya glanced at Daniel, her heart aching. He had been so sure his parents didn't care, that they would never come looking for him. But now, his mother was here. Finally, Daniel exhaled sharply. Did Dad send you? His voice was cold, guarded. Evelyn shook her head immediately. No, he doesn't know I'm here. Daniel studied her, his jaw tight. Then why are you here? Evelyn's lips trembled slightly as she took a step closer. Because I miss you, Daniel. Because it's been 2 years, and I can't stand not seeing my son. Daniel's face remained unreadable, but Maya could feel the tension in his body. He had every right to be wary. Then Evelyn's gaze dropped to Maya's stomach, where her small but noticeable baby bump was visible. Her breath hitched, her hand covering her mouth. "You're really having a baby," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Maya instinctively placed her hand over her belly, and Daniel immediately stepped closer to her, as if shielding her. "Yes," Maya said softly, "we are." Evelyn looked back up at Daniel, her eyes filled with genuine longing. "Please, Daniel, let me in. Let me talk to you." Silence stretched between them again. Maya gently touched Daniel's arm, giving him a silent message: "It's your choice." Daniel took a deep breath, staring at the woman who had raised him, the woman who had stayed silent while his father tried to break him. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, he stepped aside. "Come in," he said quietly. Evelyn let out a shaky breath of relief, stepping inside as Maya closed the door behind them. This conversation was long overdue, and none of them knew where it would lead. Evelyn sat on the couch, her hands wrapped around a warm cup of tea as she looked at her son. It had been a long and emotional conversation, one filled with apologies, regrets, and an attempt to mend what had been broken. Daniel had been cautious at first, but slowly he allowed himself to listen, to hear his mother out. "I don't expect you to forgive me overnight," Evelyn said softly. "But I need you to know that I'm proud of you, Daniel. I always have been." Daniel swallowed hard, emotions he had buried for 2 years rising to the surface. "Then why did you let him do this to me?" Evelyn's eyes filled with sorrow. "Because I was weak. Because I was afraid of losing both of you. And in the end, I lost you anyway." Silence filled the room. Then Daniel sighed, rubbing his forehead. "So, what happens now?" Evelyn exhaled. "I have to go back this evening. I wouldn't want your father to notice my absence." Maya frowned. "You mean he doesn't know you're here?" Evelyn shook her head. "No, and I need to keep it that way." She placed a gentle hand on Daniel's. "But no matter what, I'll always be here for you. And for my grandchild." For the first time in a long time, Daniel felt something shift inside him. A small crack in the wall he had built around himself. He nodded. "Thank you, Mom." Months later, back in their original city, Richard Carter sat in his office, his fingers steepled as he listened to the private investigator standing before him. She was followed to a city about 3 hours away. The investigator reported, "She's been going there in secret." Richard's face darkened. "And?" The investigator hesitated before sliding a file across the desk. "Sir, I think you should see this." Richard opened it, and his eyes widened. Inside were recent photos of Daniel and Maya. But what truly caught his attention was the headline from a business article. "Daniel Carter, the rising tech tycoon who walked away from family wealth and built his own empire." Richard's hands clenched into fists as he scanned the article. His son hadn't failed, he had thrived. And not just that, he had become a major player in the business world. Richard's jaw tightened. Daniel had walked away, abandoned everything Richard had built for him. And still, he had won. The investigator cleared his throat. "Sir, what would you like to do?" Richard exhaled slowly, a dark glint in his eyes. "Prepare the jet," he said coldly. "It's time to pay my son a visit." Richard Carter stood outside Daniel's grand home, his fists clenched at his sides. The house was a testament to his son's success, a success Richard had tried to prevent. He had come here to confront Daniel, to demand answers, to reassert his authority as the head of the Carter family. But now, standing at the doorstep, staring at the warm glow of the lights inside, he hesitated. Through the large windows, he could see Maya walking slowly across the living room, one hand resting on her heavily pregnant belly. Daniel was right beside her, his hand gently supporting her back as she smiled up at him. They looked happy. Not just happy, complete. Richard swallowed hard. This is what he had been fighting against? For months, he had tried to bring Daniel back into the Carter empire. He had spent time, money, and power trying to crush his son's independence, to remind him that without the Carter name, he was nothing. But he had been wrong. Daniel had not only survived without him, he had flourished. And if Richard pushed him again, if he tried to interfere, Daniel might disappear forever. And this time, Evelyn would never forgive him. Richard exhaled sharply and took a step back. For the first time in his life, Richard Carter backed down. He had lost the battle. But if he ever wanted to see his son and his grandchild, he had to stop being Daniel's enemy. Without knocking, he turned and walked away. Daniel frowned as he glanced out the window. A shadow moved across the driveway, disappearing into the night. Maya noticed his tense expression. "What's wrong?" she asked, rubbing her belly gently. Daniel hesitated. "Nothing," he said finally. "Just thought I saw something." Maya smiled softly, taking his hand. "Come sit with me." Daniel let out a breath, turning away from the window. Whatever it was, it didn't matter. His life was here now, with Maya, their baby, their future. Richard sat in his grand office, staring at the city skyline as Evelyn walked in, holding a cup of tea. She placed it on his desk, studying him carefully. "So," he said softly, "how is our son?" Richard's jaw tightened. He had expected his wife to react this way, calm but knowing. Of course, she had known he would find out eventually. She had been waiting for this moment. She exhaled deeply, her voice lower than usual. "He's fine?" She hesitated before adding, "He's happy." Richard's expression softened. "And?" Evelyn looked at him, her piercing gaze meeting his. "And I won't do anything about it." She raised an eyebrow. "You mean you won't interfere?" Richard sighed, leaning back in his chair. "I went there, Evelyn. I stood in front of his house." Evelyn's eyes widened slightly in shock, but she quickly masked it. "But I didn't go in," Richard admitted after a long silence. Evelyn sat down across from him, watching him closely. "Why?" Richard ran a hand down his face, looking suddenly tired, older. "Because if I push him any further, I'll lose him for good, and I can't risk that." Evelyn smiled, a bittersweet look in her eyes. "You finally understand." Richard let out a dry chuckle. "Took me long enough, didn't it?" Evelyn nodded. "Yes, but I'm glad you got there." Richard looked down at his hands. "Do you think he'll ever forgive me?" Evelyn reached across the table, squeezing his hand gently. "With time, but you have to earn it, Richard." He swallowed hard. "And what if he never does?" Evelyn gave him a knowing smile. "Then you'll have to make sure your grandchild never has a reason to hate you too." Richard's heart clenched at the thought. He had lost time with his son, but maybe, just maybe, he still had a chance to be a grandfather. He exhaled slowly. "I'd like that." Evelyn nodded. "Then start by letting Daniel come to you when he's ready. No more control, no more power plays, just be his father." Richard closed his eyes briefly before nodding. "I'll try." It wasn't a perfect ending, but for the first time in his life, Richard Carter was willing to change. Daniel rushed to the door, his heart pounding as he grabbed the hospital bag. Maya stood beside him, her face tense as she took deep breaths, clutching her belly. She was in labor. He was about to step out when he froze. Standing in front of him was his mother, and beside her, his father. Daniel's breath caught in his throat. Richard Carter, the man who had tried to ruin him, the man he had walked away from. He hadn't seen him in over 2 years. Daniel's jaw tightened, anger flashing in his eyes. "What the hell?" Maya groaned softly, gripping his arm. "Daniel, we don't have time for this," she gasped. Daniel snapped back to reality. Maya and their baby came first. Nothing else mattered right now. He turned back to his parents. "I don't know why you're here," he said, his voice cold. "But I don't have time for this right now." Evelyn stepped forward, her voice gentle. "We know, that's why we came, to be here, to support you, both of you." Daniel hesitated, his gaze flickering to Richard. His father's face was unreadable, but for the first time there was no arrogance, no control. Just something else. Something that looked a lot like regret. Richard cleared his throat. I wanted to be here, for my grandson." Daniel's chest tightened. He wanted to push them away, to tell them they had no place here. But then Maya squeezed his hand, her eyes full of pain, but also something else. "We'll talk later," she whispered to him. "Right now we need to go." Daniel exhaled sharply before nodding. "Fine, but this doesn't mean anything," he muttered to Richard. "I don't forgive you." Richard nodded slowly. "I know." Daniel turned away, helping Maya to the car. Evelyn and Richard followed behind, their presence silent but significant. This wasn't a reconciliation, but it was a beginning, and maybe, just maybe, Daniel wasn't the only one about to experience the miracle of new life tonight. Because Richard Carter, for the first time in his life, was about to meet his grandson. Hours later, in the quiet of the hospital room, Daniel sat beside Maya, his heart full as he gazed down at his newborn children. twins, a beautiful baby girl and a strong baby boy. Maya, exhausted but glowing, smiled weakly as she cradled their daughter while Daniel held their son. "We really did it," she whispered. Daniel chuckled softly, his eyes misty with emotion. "Yeah, we did. The moment was perfect, until there was a soft knock at the door." Daniel's smile faltered as he looked up, seeing his parents standing there. Evelyn's eyes were filled with tears, but it was Richard who shocked him the most. For the first time in his life, the powerful, unshakable Richard Carter looked vulnerable. He wasn't the controlling businessman anymore. He wasn't the man who had tried to ruin Daniel's future. He was just a father, and now a grandfather. Evelyn stepped forward first, her hands clasped together. "May we come in?" she asked softly. Daniel hesitated, glancing at Maya. She gave him a small, reassuring nod. Daniel sighed and nodded. "Yeah, come in." Evelyn rushed over, her face lighting up as she saw the babies. "Twins," she breathed. "Oh, they're perfect." Richard stayed at the door. His hands were shoved in his pockets, his face unreadable. But his eyes were locked on the babies. Maya glanced at Daniel, then at Richard. With a tired but kind smile, she spoke. "Would you like to hold your grandson?" Richard's eyes widened in shock. He looked at Daniel, as if asking for permission. Daniel hesitated, then slowly stood up, walking over to his father. Without a word, he gently placed his son in Richard's arms. Richard stared down at the tiny baby, completely still. The powerful billionaire, the ruthless businessman, was suddenly just a man holding his grandson. His lips parted slightly, his fingers trembling as he held the child carefully. "He's so small," he whispered. Daniel watched, something shifting inside him. He had spent so long hating this man. But right now, he wasn't looking at Richard Carter, the businessman. He was looking at his father. After a long moment, Richard looked up. His voice was thick when he finally spoke. "I'm sorry, son." Silence filled the room. Maya reached for Daniel's hand, squeezing it. And for the first time in years, Daniel didn't pull away. Maybe, just maybe. This was the beginning of healing. And with his new family in his arms, he knew one thing for certain. This was the life he was always meant to have. A month after the birth of their beautiful twins, Daniel and Maya finally had their wedding ceremony. It was nothing short of magical. Set in a breathtaking garden with fairy lights twinkling above them, they stood hand in hand, surrounded by friends, family, and love. Daniel gazed at Maya as if she was the only woman in the world. Dressed in an elegant white gown, she looked more beautiful than ever, holding a bouquet while their baby twins rested peacefully in the arms of their bridesmaids. When it was time for their vows, Daniel took a deep breath, his voice steady but emotional. "Maya, you are my greatest love, my strength, and the mother of my children. I walked away from a life I thought I needed, only to find a life I never knew I wanted, because you were in it. I promise to love you, protect you, and build a future with you, forever." Maya wiped a tear as she smiled, squeezing his hands. "Daniel, from the moment I met you, you changed my life. We have faced storms, but through it all, you never let me fall. You are my best friend, my partner, and the father of our perfect babies. I promise to stand beside you, love you, and cherish you. Until forever." With tears in their eyes, they sealed their vows with a deep, passionate kiss as their guests erupted into cheers. Daniel had never felt this kind of happiness before. His children were thriving, his wife was by his side, and his business was flourishing. Even more surprising, he was mending things with his parents. Richard Carter was no longer trying to control his life. Instead, he was learning how to be a father and grandfather. It wasn't perfect, and there were still wounds that needed healing, but for the first time, they were trying. As the night of their wedding celebration continued, Daniel pulled Maya into his arms, swaying with her on the dance floor. She rested her head against his chest, smiling. "We made it," she whispered. Daniel kissed the top of her head. "Yeah, love, we did." And with their family complete, their love stronger than ever, and their future brighter than they ever imagined. After spending their honeymoon on a secluded paradise beach, Daniel and Maya returned home, feeling more in love than ever. The past few years had been a whirlwind of challenges, victories, and love, and now they were finally settling into the life they had built together. But as they walked through their front door, Daniel wasn't expecting the man waiting for him in the living room. Richard Carter. His father stood with his usual composed demeanor, but there was something different this time. A weight in his expression. Maya, sensing the conversation was a private one, gave Daniel's hand a squeeze before heading upstairs to check on the babies. Daniel sat across from his father, studying him. "What brings you here?" Richard exhaled, folding his hands together. "I'm retiring." Daniel's eyes widened slightly. "That soon?" Richard gave a slow nod. "I've been thinking about it for a while, and now I'm certain it's time to step away." Daniel frowned. "And you're telling me this because—" Richard met his son's gaze. "Because you were always meant to take over, Daniel." Silence stretched between them. Daniel had always known this day would come. That one day, his father would expect him to take control of Carter Industries. But now that it was happening, he wasn't sure how to feel. He had built his own empire, created something separate from his father's legacy. Could he really manage both? Richard must have seen the hesitation in his eyes because he sighed. "I know you have a life here. A family. Your own company. That's why I'm asking, how will you navigate both?" Daniel leaned back, exhaling. He thought about everything he had built, about Maya, their twins. Finally, after a long pause, he met his father's gaze with certainty. "I will not let your legacy die," Daniel said firmly. "But I don't need to be involved in the day-to-day operations. I'll put the right people in place to run things efficiently while I oversee everything from a distance." Richard studied him for a moment before nodding slowly. "That's a smart approach." Daniel smirked. "I learned from the best." Richard chuckled, shaking his head. "That you did." For the first time, there was mutual respect between them. Not as a father trying to control his son, but as two powerful men recognizing each other's strength. As Richard stood to leave, he hesitated at the door. "You've built something remarkable, Daniel. I may not have seen it before, but I see it now. And I'm proud of you." Daniel felt something in his chest tighten. He had spent so much time fighting his father that he had never expected to hear those words. After a beat, he simply nodded. "Thanks, Dad." Richard gave him a small smile before walking out. As the door closed, Maya appeared on the staircase holding one of the twins. "So, how do you feel?" she asked gently. Daniel walked over to her, wrapping an arm around her waist as he kissed her forehead. "I feel," he said, looking down at their child, "like I just stepped into something bigger than I ever imagined." Maya smiled. "And are you ready?" Daniel smirked. "With you by my side? Always." As they stood together, the weight of family, legacy, and love surrounding them, Daniel knew one thing for sure. He wasn't just taking over a business. He was building a dynasty. Wow. I hope you all enjoyed this amazing story. Please like and share. Thanks for watching.